Carolina Northern Railroad was built through here in 1891, and it shifted the center of Dacula from about a mile north at what now is the intersection of Fence and Dacula Road to the area that you see in historic downtown along US 29.
The biggest thing I can remember about Dacula Depot was during cotton gin season, the whole street and everything was just covered with cotton, bale cotton. And as children, you could walk on bale cotton the whole length of where all the stores were there. They just had no warehouses to put it in. And of course, once it was sold and all, it'd be put on the rail car to be shipped off. And it was just stored in the open there on the streets there, but it was an unusual sight to see that much bale cotton just sitting on the end.
Every time the whistle would blow on the steam locomotive, all us kids would head to the edge of the railroad, go watch the freight trains and the passenger trains. There were a lot of passenger trains then. And the northbound and southbound would meet in Dacula, and one of them would take siding, and we'd go down on the platform at the depot, which we had a train depot here then, and we'd go on the platform and you could see into the passenger cars, and especially the dining car, there was people eating their evening meal, and they had the linen and the china and silver on the tables. It was really something to see all that. Occasionally what they call the bridge crew would come in, and they'd put some cars on the siding and live in the siding while they was repairing the trestle down here, the cab with that line, and the bridge, which is cement now, but it was a wood then. They'd repair those bridges, and they had a cook car and sleeping car and everything for all the crew to work. And in the afternoons when they'd start cooking the evening meal, it smelled so good. They'd cook fat back and make gravy and biscuits, and they would slip us kids some of them. We'd go up there. It was really good.
They had this big old pole out outside the railroad, and the mail bags were probably this high, and there was a way that they could hook it onto that pole some way, and there was a mechanical iron arm that swung out from the train and caught the bag.
Can you even remember the first time you ever saw a car?
Yeah, I believe I sort of remember it. I remember the first one I rode in.
Reckon how old you were?
I was nearly grown. No, I wasn't. I was about 8-year-old.
Really?
Nick's daddy. He bought the first car was in this settlement.
Really? I didn't know that. Is that the one you're talking about, the first time you rode in one?
And they carried us, one time Mr. Mahaffey carried us, him and Jewel carried us down at Grandma Rook's to spend the day and then come back after us in the car. We thought that was the biggest trip.
That's something I bet people went out their yards and stood outside to watch them go by, didn't they?
Yeah, they'd run out, people would look.
The first car that I can ever remember us having had a T-model. My daddy had bought one. And it got tore up somehow, I don't remember. It seemed like John might have been driving it some. But then we bought another one. It was an A model. Then my brother John, he turned it over.
I think you blamed John with all of it. Yeah. You didn't have anything to do with any of that. No.
Tore it up. Hey, we tore that one up. I was done working anyway, and I bought a 1970. No, it wasn't that early. It was a 1937 Ford. One time we didn't have one mail carrier here, and that was Willie Dalton. And somehow somebody was carrying mail and quit, and then he come by the store one time and asked me did I want to be a sub mail carrier. Of course I said, yeah, I'll be glad to have you. and I went through the process of learning. I went with him a few times, and went to carrying it then. I carried it for a long, long time. At one time, there wasn't anybody here but this Willie and I, and we had 105 miles and 750 boxes. That's a big mail route.
Take you all day.
Yeah, in the wintertime, when the days were short, it wasn't unusual. You had to turn your lights on inside your car to read the mail before you got back in. Of course, that was just in the wintertime. And usually, bad weather, you forever get stuck everywhere, you know. Of course, I always went prepared for that. I had chains on wheels, and then I bought me these buckle chains where I could buckle on about two on each back wheel. I got stuck, I just get out and put them on, and drive to the top of the hill and get out and throw them in my trunk and go on down the road.
The old story of rain, sleet, and hail not keeping the mail from going through is pretty true then when you're out delivering on that route.
Yeah, that was an unheard of thing. Everybody carried the mail. Occasionally, I guess it was, but I can't ever remember not going part of the way anyway. You know.
Dacula's heritage is the transportation part of it, and I'm sure you remember when all the roads were dirt, including probably what came to be 29 Highway.
Yeah, it was all dirt roads back in them days.
As a young man, when did you have your first automobile?
We never had one.
You never had one. When do you remember seeing your first automobile?
When I went to school. When I went to school, I think there was one automobile in school, and that was Principal had one. And then, of course, a little bit later on, then they started having school teachers. You know, they started getting them. But to my knowledge, none of the students never had an automobile in high school. None.
And how did they get to school, Winfrey?
Buses and walk. Walk.
You walk from here to Dacula, where the middle school is now, right?
Yeah, but then they started running buses, and I believe 1934, 35, somewhere in there, and then we started riding the buses.
I want to ask you now about some well-known persons who traveled through Dacula on a regular basis. The first one is the goat man, Chess McCartney, who traveled the main highways and was known to many people because of his mode of transportation. Tell us about him and if you ever purchased anything from him.
I never did purchase anything from him, but I remember him mighty well. And he used to always, when he come through where Fence Road here comes out at my home place, he used to always spend the night there. And he had a small wagon with about, I guess, 8 or 10 goats, had several goats. And it was very ragged looking, but it had a little cover over it, and he was a small man, and he could get up in there and actually sleep in there. But he wasn't very clean, I mean, living like that up down the road. And back then it was kind of dangerous. It was beginning to get pretty dangerous when he was traveling, because he'd go right down the highway, and the traffic would have to stop for him even that day and time. Of course, he wouldn't survive now with as much traffic as we got. But he was a very interesting person and a very knowledgeable person. He had a lot of knowledge about it.
So you could tell when he was coming by the smell.
He always attracted a lot of attention when he came by. Yeah.
And he made a small fire and cooked his meals? Or
Yeah, I remember seeing him. He just always would get him a little bit of wood or something. He'd make him a little fire and a skillet on there, and he'd cook it. I think I was telling you one time before that he would throw 3 or 4 eggs in there and 2 or 3 pieces of bacon and just stir it all together, you know.
And did he have merchandise for sale? Is that how
he had some little trinkets. I call it beads and chains and a little bit of that stuff that he sold a little bit of that long.